Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the CR Sports Podcast. Garrett, college football has been underway since the playoffs, obviously, since we last had an episode, and we've been a treat of some really great games after the first round that we went to, the Notre Dame Indiana game, which was a little bit of a blowout, and you had some blowouts mixed in that first round, but now in the second round, all four teams of the bye they have lost, and the semifinal is set now. So it's been a really exciting New Year's Eve and New Year's after a lot of college football.
Yeah, Michael, glad to be back. Not to toot my own horn, but I still do have a perfect college football playoff bracket going right now.
Yeah, mine's not. It's not.
Correctly picked that all top four seeds were going to go down. I was surprised in the way it happened, though, especially in terms of the Notre Dame game and then the Ohio State game, them jumping out to a 34 to nothing lead. Did not see that coming. I thought the Arizona State game was going to be close. I didn't see it going to double overtime, and then Penn State sort of did what I expected they would, which is sort of just melt away Boise State. They were able to completely just take away Ashton Jeanty, and the Boise State passing game wasn't bad, but they kind of just forced the ball so much to Jeanty that took up most of their plays. So it was better than the first round, but it still wasn't amazing, as we only had one what I would call a close game, but the other three were, at least more of a game into the second half and a little more watchable.
Well, I mean, I would have been doing really good in the second round. I know I picked Boise State to win, and Ashton Genty and them didn't really get it done, so that wasn't really close. But the Texas Arizona State game, I don't know, Garrett, if you watched really closely, but there was a non-targeting call that was under review in that game that I feel like if you didn't know the definition of targeting, you say what if someone didn't know what targeting was. You'd ask me, I'd point to that play right there. That was as basic as targeting can get on the call level for referees to make. And the fact that it wasn't made at that spot of the game, I think was kind of nauseating. I just really thought that that was a call that had to be made in that moment against Texas, and it would have really changed the game. And Arizona State probably moves on to win it. Uh, I mean, Arizona State also had a 4th and 13 that they backed Texas up in overtime, and Quinn Ewers dropped one in for a touchdown. So Arizona State then still had the advantage, but Cam Scatabo has really shown that he is an all-around just beast, tough, gritty player. I mean, the guy threw for a touchdown, he had a ton of receiving yards as well, and he ran all over the field. So he was utilized, and he is their best player by far, and he was unbelievable. But it really felt kind of wrong for Texas to win that game. I just thought that Arizona State should have had it.
Yeah, that was a really interesting game. It felt like the first half it was all Texas. Arizona State, I think they got a field goal off of two penalties, and then Texas went like 50-yard pass play, 30-yard touchdown, and then returned after Arizona State went three and out. Texas returned the punt for a touchdown to make it 14-3. Then it was 17-3 at half. And it sort of just felt like Texas was the better team. They had played the game, which I think is something that should be talked about. Some of these teams haven't played in a while, taking a few weeks off. I know even some of the other teams did have a week off in between, but now that they've gotten a game under their belt in the first round, they're a little more fresh, which in football, we usually think the bye is more beneficial because you get to rest your bodies, you get to come up with new plays. But maybe it wasn't in the college senses. All four higher seeds lost. Also, I think that has to do with the seedings. I don't think Arizona State and Boise State were four of the best teams in college football, just the way the seeding worked out. They got that. But the Arizona State game, the way they came back and then Burt Auburn missing two potential game-winning field goals, the second one off the post was pretty ridiculous. And then Arizona State, like you mentioned, had them to a 4th and 13 before Quinn Ewers dropped a dime in a heavy pressure situation. They were able to hold on and win that game. And I know the takeaway from the Arizona State side is that Cam Scatabo might have been the best running back in college football all year long. I do think that was maybe a bit of an overreaction. I think him and GT are definitely one and two, and I think it's really close. But you have to look at the supporting cast that each team had. I mean, Penn State was throwing all their guys in the box. And yes, GT did hit 100 yards, but that was on like 35 carries or something ridiculous. But Scataba also had a lot of carries, and he's also playing on a power four school with Arizona State. He's got better weapons around him. The Texas defense, they were definitely focused on him, but they didn't put 7 or 8 guys on the box like Penn State was doing. Penn State was just daring Boise State to throw the ball.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, Ashton Genty had one of the greatest seasons of all time. He just was just underneath Barry Sanders' record for college football rushing yards in a single season. But I don't know. I just thought that targeting call was really, really bad in that game. And then You look across the other games. I think obviously the one thing that stuck out to everybody so far is how good Ohio State has been. They blow out Tennessee in the first quarter. They blow out Oregon, who's the one seed, who by the way was undefeated all season long, the only undefeated team in the first quarter. Uh, Ohio State fans, are they still calling for Ryan Day's job? I don't know. Will Howard's looked unbelievable. Everybody has looked unbelievable for Ohio State. Travion Henderson looks really good too. I don't know who can stop Ohio State right now. It seems like they are by far the best team that is left, but there's Notre Dame just knocked down Georgia to your happiness, Garrett. They looked really good. The defense looked amazing. Marcus Freeman looked like an outstanding coach. And he's going up against James Franklin, who has never won the big game. So like, okay, let's see what can happen in that game. I think you might be looking at a Ohio State Notre Dame national championship. That's my prediction for right now.
Yeah, and that would agree with my bracket as well. So I'd be delighted to see that. But I'll recap. I'll talk about the Oregon Ohio State game a little bit as well, and then we can sort of preview the semifinals. But yeah, Ohio State between Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins in the backfield, and then Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Ibuka, the wide receivers. If Will Howard's going to play like this with all that talent around him, I can't see a team beating Ohio State. I'd like to say that Notre Dame could beat them, but the way they just looked against Oregon, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared to play them. This is what I thought we were going to see coming in this season. When I saw Ohio State got Will Howard, I was like, man, Will Howard had great stats last year with Kansas State. The things he's going to be able to do now in Columbus with all that skill around him, finally, they've put it to the test and it's really worked out. And I would like to say the seeding does need to be looked at again and reviewed, not only from the aspect of, you know, top four seeds losing and two of them who maybe wouldn't have even gotten in if it was different. I still think Boise State and Arizona State get in, but them being the 3 and 4 seed, I thought was a little unfair. But the fact that Oregon, who's 13-0, the only undefeated team in college football, their first round quarterfinal matchup, they have to play Ohio State, the hottest team in the country. That felt a little bit unfair to them. A team that they had beaten closely in the regular season, who obviously is going to want revenge. It's hard to beat the same team twice, and Ohio State is probably the hottest team in college football. So I would have liked to see Ohio State maybe end up in a different spot where they weren't facing off against Oregon because I did think Oregon kind of got screwed from that
Yeah,
standpoint.
I
But at the
guess.
same time, the Buckeyes look unbeatable.
Did they get screwed? Like they got blown out. It wasn't even really close. So like that's the argument. I mean, let's see if Texas can put up a better fight. I don't think so. I don't think Texas is even playing good right now. I think they shouldn't even beat Arizona State. And this Ohio State team, if anything has been, if anything similar from what the past two games have been, this game will be over at halftime as well. Which is kind of crazy to say, just because a few short weeks ago they just lost to Michigan, and everyone was like, Ryan Day might be the worst coach of all time. He can never beat Michigan, can never do anything. And now they look like they might be on the way to a historic national championship with just blowing out teams left and right. Now I think it will be a lot harder if they go off against a Notre Dame defense in the national championship that this has been stellar. I will say that. I think that defense can present problems. Same can be said for the Penn State defense.
Yeah. I think you saw my tweet that I put out on
Oh yeah.
X. Notre Dame, they have a formula to win football games, and it's not pretty, it's not exciting. And I know both you and I witnessed that when they beat Arizona, but they do the simple things, and I think that's what Marcus
Arizona,
Freeman,
Indiana.
Indiana, my bad. I think that's what Marcus Freeman sort of wanted to key in on after that Northern Illinois loss. I think he wanted to make sure this team knew that they had an identity, and right now they do have an identity. They're going to play physical. They're going to just try to outman the other team with how physical they are both on the offense and defensive line. They're missing Riley Mills, their best interior D lineman. Howard Cross also went down, so that could be an issue for the Penn State game. But this Notre Dame team, they don't turn the ball over. Their turnover margin is one of the best in the country. Their special teams came to play with a kickoff return to start the second half for a touchdown. Mitch Jeter, who I don't know if you saw the stat they put up, he was 8 for 15 on field goals this year. That's not very good. He was able to nail 3 40+ yard field goals and went 3 for 3 on the game. And Riley Leonard threw for like 90 yards. He threw for less than 100
Yeah.
yards. And yet the rushing attack, the QB draws, his awareness in the pocket to run when he doesn't have anything, and just to take the simple plays that are designed for him. That's the reason Notre Dame has been successful in their speed on defense. Their defense has been outstanding this year. And I think it's the speed that's the biggest thing. Normally, when we saw Notre Dame make the college football playoff, whether it was Clemson or Alabama, this team would just out athleticize Notre Dame. They would just run to the outside, and Notre Dame couldn't catch up with them. They couldn't move the ball on offense. Their defense would hang in there for a little bit, but then the athletes on these other teams would just be too much. To me, the athletes that Notre Dame has this year is different from past years, and this is a different team. I don't think Riley Leonard is the most skilled quarterback we've had in the last 10 years, but this is the best Notre Dame team we've had in the last 10 years because of their ability to play together and to play to a game plan, and they have a formula to win, and they're really relying on their defense for that, and it's working out just fine.
And if Riley Leonard doesn't turn the ball over, that's what they need him to do. That's like the recipe for success, I feel like. And also, Garrett, that play that Marcus Freeman called where they were going for the punt and then they run everybody off and then the offense comes out and then Georgia has to switch. It was so good because then you're like, well, I don't think they're actually going to go for it here. But then they get the defensive line to jump and it's a free play. It's a first down. Take a shot. Why not? And then it just completely changes the game. And when Marcus Freeman outcoaches Kirby Smart, I mean, he can outcoach anybody. Kirby Smart's like the best coach in the country. So that's that was really impressive for me to see. And just the way that they play has been really unbelievable. Another thought I had on Notre Dame was if it weren't for that Northern Illinois loss, right, they'd be undefeated. They'd have 14 wins right now. They'd be 14-0 and be everyone would be talking about them like maybe this is the greatest season ever, I guess. Um, if you could win the college football, because no one's going to win it undefeated this year. And I was thinking about that if they could have not lost to Northern Illinois. But at the same time, I think that that loss kind of changed the way that this team played. I mean, you look before versus after. I know they had the A&M win before, but afterwards they've just been playing at a much higher level. And I think that's because Marcus Freeman really got to his guys and honed down his message of how he wants them to play Notre Dame football. And they just have looked like a completely different team. And I think that loss has kind of proven that this is the way that we want it to work. This is the way we want to win, and this is our formula.
Yeah, I think that loss means way more than beating Northern Illinois would have done for them. And something that's lost in this is that was Notre Dame's sixth ranked win of the year. That's the most they've had in a season since the 1980s.
It's a lot.
They've never eclipsed 13 wins in a season before yesterday. This is the most wins that a Notre Dame team's ever had. And I know that's because we've never seen, this is the first year of the 12-team format, and the four-team format was even new before that. But this Notre Dame team is truly special. I mean, Riley Leonard was scared he had to call for a police escort home after the New Northern Illinois game because he was frankly that scared and embarrassed after losing at home to a team like that. And now you look at him and he's getting, the Sugar Bowl MVP after the game. He's getting interviewed up on that stage and everyone's, shouting his name, cheering him on. They're not clowning him like they once were. So from that point on, Notre Dame has completely turned around their season. Penn State's going to present a new challenge just because I think Penn State sort of tries to play a very similar style that Notre Dame tries to play. Drew Aller's he's not a top tier QB in college football, but he plays winning football as well. He knows what his job is. They have a great rushing attack, and their defense has been amazing as well. They sort of just grit and grind their way past teams that they're better than. They don't lose the teams that they're better than. The problem with Penn State is they haven't won the big one, which people have been saying for both of these teams, really. That was Notre Dame's first New Year's Six bowl win since I think 1988 or 94. I know it's been in the 1900s, so a big win for both sides, but this is going to be another chance for one of these teams to get yet another big win and play for the national championship.
Yeah, and it will say a lot about both coaches as well. I think that the big win though could be against Georgia, what just happened for Notre Dame. So they finally got that off their back. On Penn State's side, beating SMU and Boise State, not really the same thing in my opinion. I think you'd agree with that too, Garrett.
Yeah, I think it's definitely not the same. I know some people are trying to say that, Georgia had a backup quarterback and all that, but Notre Dame was missing an All-American cornerback. I think they were missing four
And a key
defensive
tackle.
starters from the start of the season. So I'm not a big fan of that excuse. And Gunnar Stockton to me looked pretty good yesterday. I didn't think he was the issue for Georgia.
Yeah, and Carson Beck really hasn't been that great all year anyways. So that wasn't their strength of their team, their quarterback play. Um, let's just say they didn't rely on their quarterback like Syracuse did on Kyle McCord this past season. But it's a shame that the best quarterback in the country isn't playing right now, but that's all right. I will say this though about the Sugar Bowl. I mean, we'd be remiss not to talk about it with how before, we thought it was gonna be a game at night on New Year's Day at 8:45, and then we heard about the tragedy that happened overnight in New Orleans, and it was just really scary and awful. And it's like this is not the way you want to start off 2025 as a country, as a nation, as a world, with a terrorist attack happening. I just think it's kind of this problem is long overdue of getting solved. I don't know how you do solve it exactly. I think that prayer is a great way to try to attack that and just pray that everybody finds peace in this world and doesn't want to cause harm to others and just find our Lord and Savior's message, Garrett. But that was a tough thing to see, and you know I guess the only message that we can share, because I know we can't do anything about this, like whatever, is just to love your enemy and just pray for other people, I guess.
Yeah, our thoughts and prayers are certainly with the victims and all those seriously injured or suffered from
Yeah, it was
that
terrible.
attack. That's very scary and not something we ever want to see again. I'm glad both teams were able to stay inside the hotels and safe, and that no one else was harmed. But glad that the football game was able to be played in a safe stadium, and hope that nothing like that ever happens again, especially this year, as we look forward to the college football playoff semifinals happening next Thursday and Friday, to see who's going to earn a spot to play January 20th in the national championship.
Yeah, it was also just a credit to all the law enforcement probably that made that a safe venue to play of the very next day. That's not an easy task, especially when there was bombs going off around the area too. So there were still issues going on there, and it was just a really sad sight to see, especially with all those players then having to, lock down, not knowing if they're playing or not, and then for everybody to play the next day. That really I think is an uplifting thing to see, and it was a good game for the most part that we got. And Notre Dame showcased it.
Yeah. So we can talk about the NFL a little bit now.
Yeah.
As you know, the NBA is sort of, in the middle of its season. The All-Star break's coming up here in about a month or so. College football, I think, is the hottest topic, but the NFL, the playoffs start next week. This is week 18, the final hurrah for this regular season, which has been a little disappointing in my opinion. And there aren't a ton of meaningful games to talk about this week, but I guess the highlight of this week is going to be on Sunday night when the Vikings take on the Lions to see who's going to earn the one seed and who's going to be traveling to either Atlanta or Tampa Bay, most likely Tampa Bay, uh, and fall to the five seed in the wild card round.
I think this is such an interesting game. Minnesota and Sam Darnold has been playing. They've been playing so great recently too. The win against the Packers they had last week was super impressive, even though they let Green Bay get back in it a little bit late in the game. And the Lions, I mean, these are two teams that are 14-2. They're going to have unbelievable records. Whether one team's going to be 15-2, one team's going to be 14-3. One's going to be the one seed, one's going to be a five seed. Huge difference. The one seed, almost about 50% of the times in the last, like, a lot, I don't know, what is it, last like 50 Super Bowls or something like that. They they make it to the Super Bowl. So if you have the one seed, you have home field advantage, and now you're the only team with a bye in this new playoff format for the past few years. It makes a world of a difference. So I think that both of these teams are obviously desperately trying to get that, but then versus going on the road for the playoffs. Um, this is in Detroit, though. I think that matters a little bit here. I think if it was in Minnesota, it'd be skewed a little bit. My heart wants the Vikings. I'm rooting for the Vikings in this one, Garrett, but I think going into Minnesota is a challenge on its own, and or going into Detroit's a challenge on its own. And I think the Lions are kind of going to set this up for themselves in a really nice way and get the win. And I'll tell you why. I think that, the experience that they had last year with making it to the MC Championship game, and, this is the year that they were ready to take that next step and be the team that represents the NFC in the Super Bowl. That's what the talk was going into the season. And so for Minnesota to be like a year ahead or just like have caught fire with Sam Darnold and caught fire with this defense, it's been unbelievable. That's obviously a great accomplishment that they've made. But I think that this kind of goes into it in one of these last week games. So my brain is telling me to pick the Lions just because they are the team that, they've been ready for this. But at the same time, I think Kevin O'Connell is really just like one of the best coaches in the NFL. And I think he wins over Dan Campbell in a coaching matchup every single day of the week, in my opinion. And I think that this Minnesota Vikings team has proven themselves. I think Sam Darnold's proven himself, just kind of like how Jared Goff has in Detroit. I think you're setting up for a really, really great game on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the Vikings just for a little bit because this is a team who, the need after the departure of Kirk Cousins and everything else fell out was a quarterback. And a lot of people had thought they addressed that with JJ McCarthy in the draft, who I'm not high on whatsoever. I don't think he should be the quarterback of the future for the Vikings. But, then he tears his ACL in preseason. And so the win total for Minnesota coming into the year was 6.5, which now they have more than doubled at 14 wins. They could still get to 15 by beating Detroit here in week 18. But we know the weapons that Minnesota has. I think I completely agree with you. Kevin O'Connell should be the coach of the year, and he is one of the best coaches in the NFL. He just works with the work he does with quarterbacks is absolutely amazing. You saw Kirk Cousins struggling in Atlanta this year without him, and Sam Darnold is a guy who's admitted to seeing ghosts in an NFL game before. He's bouncing around from roster to roster, and now he looks like a possible MVP candidate in his first year in
Crazy.
Minnesota. So I mean, he's only 27. To me, the answer for the Vikings is to lock him up long term and have him be the quarterback of the future, no question, ahead of JJ McCarthy. Will that be the case? I sure hope so. I don't know if you saw the video of the locker room when he
I
walked
love him.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah, after that win, and you sort of just saw Kevin McConnell sitting back there, just smiling, taking it all in as Sam Darnold's teammates were giving him a little water shower. They love this guy. He's a great leader. And he's doing his job. He's getting the ball to TJ Hawkinson, to Justin Jefferson, to Jordan Addison. Aaron Jones is having a solid first year in Minnesota. And Brian Flores is doing an amazing job with his defense as well. He blitzes more than any coach in the league. The other team is constantly off balance. And you saw Jordan Love until that last quarter. He couldn't really get anything done as Brian Flores was just throwing him new looks, blitzing left and right.
And they cause
I
turnovers.
mean, yeah, so to me, the Vikings team is the team of the 2024-2025 NFL season so far, the way they've been able to play. But at the same time, the Lions, they were sort of the favorite in the NFC coming into the season, and they're now 14-2. I
Yeah.
was actually very impressed by the way they played against the 49ers. The way the 49ers came out, it felt like they were throwing the kitchen sink at the Lions. They were using, all these new plays, and Brock Purdy felt like he played possibly his best game of the season before, he threw those two late dumb interceptions. And it felt like the 49ers were like, you know what? How about a big win over the Lions before the season ends? And the Lions weren't having any of it. The Lions offense came to play. Do I think it was smart using that hook and ladder trick play? I thought maybe they could have saved that for the playoffs, but that was pretty cool to watch. But the Lions are legit. It's not the cute little Lions anymore. This is a scary team that I wouldn't want to face in the playoffs.
Garrett, it's really hard. I'm going back and forth in my own mind of who I think is actually going to win this football game. I do think being home in this game does matter for Detroit. I think if this was in Minnesota, I'd pick Minnesota in a heartbeat. I'm not as confident in the Lions. I guess I really want to pick the Vikings, but I feel like it's just a toss up at the end of the day.
Yeah. And so those seem to be the two best teams in the NFC, at least for now. The Eagles are up there as probably the third best team. Something I do want to talk about is Saquon Barkley being 100 yards away from catching Eric Dickerson for the most yards in a season in NFL history. And I know what people are saying, the extra game is
He's
going to
he's
help him up. But
he's not playing though.
he's also at like 30 plus less carries than Dickerson's at. I believe Saquon is not going to play, I think I heard.
Yeah, I don't think he's playing.
And I would like to say that I agree that is the right decision. I think he shouldn't play. I know that is an NFL record that has stood the test of time, really, but if you're the Eagles, you got to think a Super Bowl is more important than Saquon beating this record.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if he even if he did break the record, I think there'd be an asterisk on it saying, he did it in more games than Dickerson had. And, Adrian Peterson actually came the closest. He was 9 yards away, I think, back in 2000, one of the early 2000 years that he was unbelievable. So there's been guys that have gotten closer than Saquon, but it was an excellent year nonetheless. Um, yeah, this Eagles team, it feels weird. What they did against Dallas isn't, I mean, Dallas is the most hurt team in the NFL. And then the game that they had against the Commanders the week before. I don't know, Garrett. I just haven't been impressed with Philly late, as of late. My question is does Jalen Hurts mean as much of this Eagles team as I like more than I thought he did? Because I mean, their offenses just look completely different without him.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know, the hype around Kenny Pickett, and then Tanner McKee throws his first touchdown pass, and the Eagles offense looked fine against Dallas, but the reality is they're not going to be going against injured Dallas defenders in the playoffs.
Yeah, they're going
So
up
we're gonna,
against Andrew Booth Jr. So that is a practice squad player through and through. Literally one player on the Cowboys who is this corner, who's probably our 10th string, was playing, and that there was just he can't run. So I mean, Kenny Pickett was able to throw a football, so congrats. But that's the reason the scoreboard was out of reach. It wasn't like this Eagles offense was dominating the whole game.
yeah, it's so if the Eagles, they're probably going to get the 2 seed, which would land them a matchup with the Packers, which I think is a very scary matchup. You saw what the
Oh,
Packers did last year as the 7 seed.
is that
Going
locked in now?
going into it's not locked in, but if the Commanders beat the Cowboys this week, they have the tiebreaker over Green Bay. So it'd be
Oh,
the
that'd be great.
Commanders at the 6 seed. So the Commanders would be playing the Rams, and then the Packers would go in to Philadelphia. And the Packers at the 7 seed last year went into Dallas. I know you remember that game, not for good reason, but that's not a team. I know they've struggled against good teams this year. Their 5 losses are 2 to the Lions, 2 to the Vikings, and 1 to the Eagles, but the Packers are not a team I'd want to see in the first round.
I think the Eagles would much rather play the Commanders than they would the Packers. I'll tell you that. The Packers are a much tougher matchup for them, especially because they've already played the Commanders twice at this point. I know the first game of the season was against the Packers, and they had a problem stopping Saquon Barkley. That game was also in Brazil, so a little bit different of a situation going on here. This is the playoffs. It's going to be in Philadelphia. All right, Jordan Love. All right, Matt LaFleur, do exactly what you did last year in the wild card, and I'll be just happy. But yeah, I think that will not be the best matchup for Philly, and that's the argument with you're the 2 seed and you don't get a bye, and you got to play in the wild card round and you go up against a really tough 7 seed. That's where I like the old format of the NFL playoffs, but maybe this year I'll like it this way.
Yeah. So the NFC is, to me, I think it's deeper than I thought it would be. I think it's actually possibly the better conference right now, which I did not see coming into the year, just because I thought the Eagles were going to be maybe a 500 team. I didn't see the Vikings being this good. The Rams are coming on now. The Commanders, I don't think this is their year, but that's not a team I'd want to play with the talent they have at quarterback and Jaden Daniels. And, the Buccaneers, I know they're 9-7, but Baker Mayfield can sling the ball, and I think they have the potential to beat some really good teams. They've already beaten the Eagles and the Lions earlier in this season.
Yeah, that's a good point, Garrett. I don't know. I think it matters a lot who gets this 1 seed and who gets this 5 seed. So I'm going to go to you. Who are you picking to win on Sunday night? Because I think that really is going to shape up everything in this playoff picture in the NFC.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Lions mainly because they are home, and I think they're just going to be maybe a little more motivated. But at the same time, if whoever loses this game is going to go into probably Tampa Bay, possibly Atlanta, and if they win, it's going to set up another rematch between these two teams again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I didn't think of it that way. It will set up that in the second.
I guess,
Yeah.
I guess unless there's some upsets with lower seeds, but
Well, if the Packers then
yeah,
beat the Eagles,
yeah. So
so
it's
that
not it's
everything.
not set in stone, but it is,
A
it is possible.
possibility. Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm gonna pick Minnesota. I think Kevin O'Connell's gonna get the troops ready, and I think Sam Darnold's gonna be slinging it like he was last week. And try to stop Justin Jefferson. It's been a thing all year. And guess what? If you stop him, Jordan Addison's been terrific this year as well. Especially with Hawkinson as well. And then Aaron Jones, hand him the ball off. He's been a beast. So I think Minnesota's gonna go in there, gonna throw up the skull chant and maybe get a huge I think not maybe. I think they definitely are gonna get a huge win on Sunday Night Football and cement the fact that no one's gonna be saying, "Oh, is Sam Darnold the future? Is Sam Darnold actually a franchise quarterback?" I think that conversation will be over after Sunday night.
Yeah, and it should be over right now, frankly.
It should be.
And, yeah.
But
And
it's not though. Some people still don't believe.
yep. And I know that's because of what he's done in the past. And I think Kevin O'Connell has really changed him and made him such a better quarterback. But, there's 2 conferences in the NFL, so it'd be unfair not to touch on the other one. And what I think is coming down to sort of a three horse race, unless I guess the Bengals can make the playoffs. I would not want to see them, but the Steelers have fallen off. I don't think they have what it takes to win more than one playoff game.
This
And
happens every year.
the Texans without Stephon Diggs and
Tank Dell.
Tank Dell, yeah, I was thinking Nico Collins, but I know Nico Collins is healthy. Without Tank Dell, I don't think they can do much. And then the Broncos and Dolphins, I really hope the Dolphins don't make the playoffs. I just don't. If they have to go into Buffalo, they're going to get ran like they do every time they go to Buffalo. And the Broncos, I know that was your surprise pick coming into the year,
Yes,
but
sir.
I just I don't think they'd be able to get it done in Buffalo either. So I think it's going to come down to the Ravens, Chiefs, and Bills. I think that's where the Chiefs has the advantage of being the one seed. They're probably not going to have, they won't see either of those teams until the conference championship.
And let me just take a little bit of credit here, Garrett. Even if the Broncos don't make the playoffs, what a pick it was. No one saw this coming. No one thought Bo Nix was the future except for me. I'm a Bo believer. I love Bo. I wish he was the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys right now, to be honest with you. Big fan of the future of the Broncos with Bo Nix, and I think they're a team that's going to be setting themselves up for playoff success in the future, but not this year. I think it is the three teams that you mentioned: Kansas City, Buffalo, and Baltimore in that ascending order. And 15-1 right now the Chiefs are. It's kind of incredible. They've only lost to the Bills. It's just setting the same thing up every year. It's kind of unbelievable what's going on. I smell it, I see it, I can believe it. I see a three-peat in the near future. It's not to my joy, but my joy as a fan of sports. You're seeing something amazing happen. You don't play great during the regular season, you win 15 games. That's incredible. That doesn't happen ever. Um, and now they're playing better. So that's like the problem. Mahomes tweaks his ankle. They start playing better. The defense is playing better. He's playing a lot better. I don't know what to say about this Chiefs team besides look out. They're the one seed again. They have home field advantage. The AFC runs through Arrowhead. And every single year Patrick Mahomes has been the starter, they've made it to at least the AFC Championship game. So that's something to be said. They're going to be in the AFC Championship game. And who do I think they're going to be facing off against? I think it's going to be against Buffalo, and I think it's to be a rematch from the 13-second game from the few couple years ago where Stefon Diggs was seen like this afterwards, and he's not there anymore. But Josh Allen is, and he's had a terrific season. And then I think it's interesting with Lamar. What seed do you think? What seed are the Ravens slotted to be? That matters.
They'll be the three seed unless they lose to the Browns and the Steelers beat the Bengals, which the Steelers would then get the three seed.
Okay, so it most likely they're the three seed. So Buffalo would have to play the Baltimore in the second round, right?
Yeah, that would be the 2-3 game.
So, and then Kansas City plays against probably, it doesn't matter. Whoever they're playing against, they're probably going to win. So,
Probably be the Texans, either the Texans Chargers game or the Texans Steelers game.
well, I don't know, Garrett. It makes it interesting. Maybe it's not Buffalo in the AFC Championship game. I feel like it would be such a disappointment to all Bills fans if they didn't make it there, to be honest with you. But Baltimore is no easy task for them, especially with Derrick Henry. The Bills have trouble stopping that on the defensive side. I don't know. I think this could set up another classic in Arrowhead from Bills and Chiefs, and that's what I'm hoping for. See if the Bills can get some redemption. And if not, it's just like, you're watching greatness, you're watching history. And I mean, no team in the NFL has ever won three Super Bowls in a row. So it would be something truly magnificent to see.
Yeah, a couple things to touch on. First of all, the CR Sports guys, I know my one of my pick, especially in the NFC, my surprise team was the Commanders, and they have now clinched a spot in the playoffs
How
with their
about that?
10-6 record. They could still get to 11 wins. And your surprise team was the Denver Broncos, who, unless they can't beat the Chiefs and the Chiefs aren't starting most of their guys, so I think the Broncos are favored to win. If all they have to do is win there, and then they'll be in the playoffs. And I know that was your surprise pick, so a couple of good picks from us there.
We'll
Our
clip it
takes
out. I'll go back and we can clip it out and put it on the post or something like that. How about that?
our takes are starting to heat up. And then something, from a
Gary, we had to after March Madness from last year.
yeah, from something from a Bills perspective. I know a lot of our listeners back home in the Rochester area support the Buffalo Bills. If the Bills don't make the conference championship, I think Sean McDermott has to go and the Bills have to find a new head coach.
If they don't make I don't know. I think Sean McDermott's done a terrific job this year in Buffalo. I think Bills fans would be feeling that way because they'd be emotional. But who are you going to get that's better than Sean McDermott?
I think there's plenty of candidates out there. Ben Johnson, I feel like has to be up for a
He's the
job.
hottest name on the planet. Everybody wants him
At
though.
some point, I think Ben Johnson has to move on from Detroit. We'll see how good of a head coach he can make. But to me, Sean McDermott's an amazing regular season coach. But Zach Taylor I thought out coached him when the Bengals beat them. I think Andy Reid's out coached him in the past. And if now he gets out coached by John Harbaugh in Baltimore, McDermott, you're a great coach, but there's better coaches in the AFC who are out coaching you in the postseason. If I'm, the Bills organization, I don't want to waste any more of Josh Allen's years. I think it's time for something else.
Well, Josh Allen has had his best year ever this year. There's no debate for that. So I think you're right. There's pressure on them in the sense of this is kind of the year, but it's so odd because who's our number one receiver? Khalil Shakir, or Keon Coleman and Kincaid, I guess. I
It's
mean,
probably Cooper
They got
right now.
Amari Cooper, but he hasn't really done much of anything since they traded for him. It's Josh Allen. It's a Josh Allen show. Running the football, it's a Josh Allen show. Passing the football, he does everything. Maybe it's a show. Maybe they put him on defense and he can play linebacker too. I wouldn't be surprised, but I feel like there's pressure on the Bills of he has this unbelievable season where he's probably playing his best of his career. And Mahomes, frankly, for the most part of the season, didn't look that great. Didn't look like an all-world talent. He didn't make the Pro Bowl. He's not going to be a first-team All-Pro like Allen will be probably, or it'll be Lamar. Who knows? Um, it's just it'd be really tough, and it already is tough. I think if you're a Bills fan to not even have the one seed. It's yeah, Kansas City won 15 games and we beat them. It's just like, well, they don't lose, and I think they're the best coach team and they're like the smartest team there is, Kansas City, and I think it's gonna make it really tough for Buffalo. But they got a way harder matchup going through Baltimore, going through one team, whoever that may be, and then Baltimore. And if it's Baltimore, I'm assuming it will be, but I don't think it's an easy task for Buffalo, and I think it might be setting up for a little bit of heartbreak around Central New York.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't want to be a believer in the Bills this year, but I am. I think the Bills, this is the year they break through. I think they're going to beat the Ravens and the Chiefs and reach the
Wow.
Super Bowl. And if they get to the Super Bowl, I think they're going to finally break that curse and win one. But that also it makes for an interesting MVP conversation. Lamar Jackson's made it really interesting between him and Josh Allen. I'd like to say Joe Burrow's in the conversation, but at 8-8 right now, especially if they don't make the playoffs, I don't think he's going to get enough serious conversation. Although the season he is having is truly historic, and we need to appreciate greatness, even if he's not leading his team to the playoffs.
Yeah, it's a fair point, Garrett. He's been really good this year. I think the MVP conversation is it's depending on what you're valuing. Josh Allen's clearly the most valuable player, and that's the definition of the award for his team than Lamar is. I mean, they have Derrick Henry and other guys, and they make it work on across the board with Baltimore. Josh Allen does everything for Buffalo. He's the reason they have all these wins. He's the reason they're the two seed. Um, I don't think it's much of a debate in that sense. I think offensive player of the year, it's clearly Lamar Jackson. His stats are better than Josh Allen's and just a little bit in every single way. So I think that's the end of the debate. I mean, it's not really close on who's most valuable. It's Allen who takes that by a mile. I think both of these guys don't really care at the end of the day, too. They're trying to break through, and one of these guys is desperately trying to say, we beat the Chiefs in the playoffs and we're going to the Super Bowl representing the AFC.
Yeah, I think it's hard to, go wrong, but I don't know. I guess voter fatigue does set in with me too. I'd rather see Allen win his first one than Lamar win his third one. And I think, you know, I just feel like Allen means more to the Bills than Lamar means more to the Ravens.
That's what I completely agree. That's the argument for Allen for MVP. But they still got a guy over in Kansas City that, just finds a way on these playoffs. And, if he is able to get to if he's able to get to another Super Bowl, I don't even know what you do anymore if you're a team in the AFC. It's just kind of crazy. They play average all season long and then get to another Super Bowl. It's kind of a crazy story. But we'll break it all down as the playoffs come for the NFL. It's coming up. College football is still coming up as well. We're in a hot spot for football in this time of year as we're in the new year of 2025. And you can expect more CR Sports podcast episodes just like this. And yeah, it's a good one today, Garrett.
Definitely. Thanks for listening.